you agree to serve in the military, you're often celebrated for your courage and your valor. Thanks for your service and your willingness to put yourself in harm's way. But the real question I want to examine today is the mental health factor of service, according to my friends at the Military Times. Diagnoses for mental health disorders among active duty military members increased approximately 40% over the last 5 years. According to the Defense Health Agency report, the report was released as a part of the agency's Armed Forces Health Surveillance Division December Medical Surveillance Report. The report examined mental health diagnoses for active duty military between the years of 2019 and 2023, and it found anxiety disorders or post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, accounted for the largest increase in diagnosis according to the report. Specifically, diagnoses for these particular disorders nearly doubled according to the report during this time period. While the report does not cite a particular cause, it can logically be contributed to the coincide of the COVID-19 pandemic. Someone who knows all too well about the commitment to service and the correlation with mental health is my friend Sam Peterson. He's a former Army bomb technician and combat veteran who nearly lost his life after multiple tours of duty in Afghanistan due to PTSD. This experience led him on a personal mission to transform the mental health care, specifically of veterans and first responders who are struggling with trauma, traumatic brain injury, depression, all in an effort to give them an outlet to receive the mental health care they deserve. In 2023, he co-founded Patriot Power Up, an inpatient integrated with VA community care, which delivers rapid relief for both TBI and PTSD in just 14 to 17 days. He also is responsible for co-founding MindSpa Denver, which is an outpatient clinic specializing in advanced mental health care treatments, such as TMS, ketamine therapy, and neuroplasticity-based interventions. He says that his work is focused on getting to the root causes of mental health conditions, reducing inflammation, rewiring the brain to provide long-term healing rather than temporary fixes. And Peterson joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's have this conversation. Sam, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend. And I'm super excited to learn about your journey in mental health and how you're helping first responders and service members with their mental health. Great to see you today, my friend, and thank you so very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. Appreciate it, Kevin.
Absolutely, Sam. So I know, my friend, that you're on a mission to help first responders and military veterans better manage their mental health, my friend. So I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by you telling me about your work and why this is so important to you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this mission is super important to me because I'm a former first responder and combat veteran myself. I was a bomb technician in the U.S. Army with several deployments to Afghanistan, and that is one of the largest issues that we have in my former career field is suicide related to mental health disorders. So I've really dedicated my professional career to minimizing the risk of suicide for veterans by treating mental health conditions more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I know that you spent more than 15 years in the Army, my friend, and I know that that personal experience really guides the work you do today. So can you tell me about it and how it affected you, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I enjoyed my time in the military quite a bit. There's few things that are more fun than blowing shit up. I got to do that, and the job of an EOD technician is to preserve personnel and property. So we got to do a lot of protecting troops on the battlefield from improvised explosive devices. The one thing they don't tell you though when you're signing up for this job is the toll that all of those blast waves take on your brain. And, eventually I found myself really struggling with mental health issues. And it got to the point where, I almost took my own life. And it was only because a couple of my friends intervened that I'm still sitting in front of you today.
Yeah, and Sam, tell me, based on that experience and your experience in the service, my friend, how do you view the concept of mental resilience, my friend? I'm curious to get your answer there.
Yeah, I mean the concept of mental resilience just to me it means you just keep going no matter what. And when just like resilience in any other situation, when you hit a setback, you hit a roadblock, you find a way either around, under, or through that challenge. And it kind of leads to a certain level of creativity in using what you have to get through to the other side of that adversity, whatever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Sam, I know that you're the founder of the Invictus Project and the Mind Spa, my friend, all in an effort to address those mental health concerns for first responders and those who serve in the military, my friend. So tell me all about those two initiatives and why they're so near and dear to your heart, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, uh, the Invictus Project was my first foray into business directly out of the military. I not only dealt with mental health issues myself, but had a mentor commit suicide and lost several friends to suicide as well. And it just became this burning desire to figure out, why are service members, losing their lives to suicide in droves? And what can we do to better address the root cause of these issues? So I started that nonprofit to pay for veterans to get more effective treatments for traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and then to gather the data so we could show that these treatments were more effective and that we should be pushing public policy in these different directions rather than just relying on talk therapy and medication management to try to deal with these issues. Because if talk therapy and med management worked 100% of the time, 22 vets a day wouldn't be killing themselves. Mind Spa kind of morphed out of that. We were able to kind of bring all these things under one roof and create a clinical space where someone can come for a one-stop shop to heal and rewire their brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also created the Patriot Power Up, my friend. And I know that addressing things like a traumatic brain injury, depression, and anxiety is important to you. So tell me about both the Patriot Power Up, my friend, and how do you think we can better support military members as they deal with their mental health? Because I know that resources are lacking sometimes in this area. So tell me, how can we reverse that trend, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. So Patriot Power Up was was a program, is the first program of its kind inside of the VA, inside of VA community care, that covered hyperbaric oxygen therapy, ketamine infusion therapy, and transcranial magnetic stimulation, along with the traditional inpatient programming. So it was the very first program of its kind. We were able to see some really incredible results with treating this way, with treating more effectively. And when I say more effectively, I mean targeting the root cause, the inflammatory cascade that goes on in the brains of people who have had a traumatic brain injury and people who are dealing with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. So we were able to see, just dramatic results. Like the average time to reach symptom remission within that program was 14 to 17 days. And that's pretty insane for someone who's been dealing with those issues for a long time. We were seeing like complete returns to baseline within 21 days. And those results were sustained over months to years after patients had left the program. So when we're answering the question about, okay, how do we treat more effectively? It's simply that we need to address the underlying neurobiology of these issues. And talk therapy, med management, and these traditional approaches simply do not do that. You cannot throw a pill at the problem of traumatic brain injury, and you cannot talk your way out of a TBI.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, tell me, when you got out of the service, my friend, I'm curious the process you went through to discover your new identity or life after the military, and what sort of advice would you have for anyone going through the same process, my friend?
Yeah, so I mean, my process was a long and painful one. It's you do lose that sense of camaraderie the day after you leave your unit, and there's really no replacing that. So it took that pain for me to realize that, hey, I wasn't the only one that was going through this. There are tons of other veterans who are dealing with this loss of identity, this loss of camaraderie. And then it just became, okay, how can I orient myself towards a mission that kind of solves these problems that me and my friends are facing as we deal with this life transition? And that's what led me down this path, is just a terrible amount of soul crushing pain.
Yeah, and I know, Sam, that you believe strongly in the power of both community and science, my friend, to really get to the personalized care aspect of it all, because I know, as you mentioned, that you're interested in determining sort of lifelong solutions instead of temporary fixes, my friend. And I'm wondering if you can explain the difference between the two and why it's important for you to permanently find a solution to these important issues, my friend.
Hey, well, thanks for asking that. Um, it's important to find a long-term solution, because otherwise you just end up on this revolving hamster wheel of mental health treatment that everybody does right now. In order to make long-term changes in the brain, you have to change the way the brain is talking to itself. You have to increase neural connectivity in certain areas. And really what it comes down to, especially in the treatment of the conditions that we specialize in, is reinforcing the prefrontal cortex. So giving your brain more executive function. What does that do? Well, see, the prefrontal cortex has projections into the rest of the brain. If we're talking about something like PTSD, if you were to look at the brain, you would see an underactive prefrontal cortex and an overactive amygdala. So that means your fight, flight, or freeze functionality of your brain is constantly hijacking your lived experience, and you're having panic attacks, and you're having to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. But if you strengthen the prefrontal cortex, you give yourself, more executive functioning, then your brain has the ability to tell that amygdala to shut the hell up, and it allows you to live your life more fully. So that's what this is all about. We really want to create a system where someone, receives an injury, they're dealing with chronic issues, but they can come to us and get care that sticks long term, so they don't have to, not only continue to re-engage with their trauma, but continue to be on this medical hamster wheel that so many veterans find themselves on.
Yeah, and Sam, what do you think it means to really revolutionize the concept of mental health and really finding a new definition to revolutionize mental health? What does that mean to you?
I think that revolutionizing mental health really just gets down to treating more effectively up front and getting away from a system that requires us to continue seeing, medical practitioners for the same ailments. We should be able, with our current medical technology, the way it is, to go and get a set of treatments and walk out the other side, never having to go back to that doctor again. That's the goal. That's the revolutionary piece of this, is let's do it right the first time. And that was one of the main principles in being a bomb technician. Our ethos is initial success or total failure. So you either do it right the first time, or very, 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 very quickly, it's no longer your problem. And that's the stance that we try to take when we're treating veterans and first responders. Let's get it right the first time. These people deserve to not be in pain anymore.
Yeah, and Sam, from a personal perspective, I'm curious if I asked you to describe the most courageous and vulnerable moments of your life where you experienced the most personal growth, what would that moment be and why, my friend?
Well, I don't know if I could point to like a specific moment over the past. I mean, I've been doing this for since 2017, so nearly a decade now. And I would have to say that, first starting this clinic, my very first like real business, was the most harrowing thing I've ever done in my life. Like stepping into the arena of medicine, not knowing jack shit about it, and having to put something together that not only is effective but is compliant with insurance companies and still makes enough money to keep the lights on, is by far the most courageous thing that I've ever done. And anyone who's ever been a small business owner, or run anything for the first time knows you never really get done getting kicked in the pants. So it just becomes this thing where you kind of adjust to the altitude and you just drive on. It kind of goes back to that resiliency point. It is in these fires that we forge ourselves into a new person, and that's really what I've tried to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, I know that you are proud of your military service, and thank you, by the way, for your service, my friend. And I'm curious, how did your military experience sort of affect the person that you are today? And what's your proudest moment of serving in the armed forces, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that the proudest moments I ever had in the service was, training and bringing up new EOD techs once I was a team leader. So mentoring these younger kids who were coming in, and I mean, shit, I was a kid myself. I was only 24. So mentoring these even younger kids to take on an insane amount of responsibility, and being able to bring up that next generation was hugely rewarding to me. And it's been, a staple of what I try to do in business as well, is just try to pay it forward. There's always someone. Not only is there always someone ahead of you, but there's always someone behind you. So how I try to take that into business is being a part of groups like Bunker Labs or IVMF, where I'm around other veteran entrepreneurs. Sometimes they're a lot farther ahead than me, and sometimes they're just getting started, and being able to speak some truth into those ladies and gentlemen's lives, to show them like, hey, this is a really great path forward, but you got to bet on yourself every day. You got to work your ass off, and you have to do that for an inordinate amount of time. And then all of a sudden success kind of catches up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, for anyone watching or listening to this, my friend, I'm curious to ask you if they're compelled to really throw their support behind veteran mental health, and they want to do something right now within their ordinary capacity to help the mission of increasing awareness for mental health. What would you suggest they start by doing, my friend? I'm curious to get your answer there.
Well, if you want to support veteran mental health, it's really just getting informed on the subject. Like, really dive into the science of some of these treatments so you can help the veterans and first responders in your area understand that there is hope, that if they are suffering, they do not have to feel this way all the time, and that we have things available that can change their brain and rewire it. That's really important. Other than that, like donating to veteran nonprofits who are supporting these things, like the Heroic Hearts Project, or our nonprofit, the Invictus Project, where they know the money is going to go, really towards getting veterans the treatment that they need. Those are the biggest two things that people can do to support. And again, that's be informed about these treatments, about these alternative methods of healing the brain, and supporting the organizations that are helping to provide access to care.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think the average person would be surprised to know about veteran mental health that they wouldn't ordinarily know, buddy?
I mean, it's the breadth of the problem, really. The one of the things that I found really stunning is some of the numbers around traumatic brain injuries and how that leads to dementia. So there was a really important study done by the Department of Defense that showed, or sorry, it was the Department of Veteran Affairs, that showed that once someone has a traumatic brain injury, the likelihood, or rather the risk of them developing dementia increases by 60%. So anytime someone's getting hit in the head, you're increasing the likelihood of neurodegenerative diseases by an incredible factor that we should all be aware of. This is a problem that doesn't just affect veterans; it affects anybody who's had a TBI.
Yeah, and Sam, for you personally, whether it be in your military service or the work you do today, what would be your proudest moment, my friend?
My proudest moment happens probably every 2 weeks, here at the clinic, and at the other programs. Is I'll have a veteran who comes in, or first responder for that matter, who comes in who's just broken. You can see the depression and the anxiety has just beat them down, and they are on their last legs. And seeing them, once everything starts to kick in and they get that relief, and they look at me and they go, "Thank you so much. I was days away from blowing my head off, and I didn't, because of these treatments." And that's the most rewarding thing that I could ever have from, and that's why I do this work, because you can literally take someone who is just on the edge of suicide and bring them back and give them back to their family. And there's nothing more rewarding than being able to give a father back to their wife and their kids.
Yeah, it's certainly a powerful mission, my friend. And I know that you live down there in Colorado, Sam. So I'm curious how, because I know Colorado has a uniquely, special or unique military community. So tell me about the military community down there in Colorado, my friend, and what people are telling you today that are still on the front lines of service, my friend.
Well, Colorado, like you said, Colorado has a wonderful military community. There's over 5 bases, just on the Front Range alone. So we have a thriving, especially Air Force and Army communities here. The Air Force Academy's down in the Springs. So, the the military community and the love for the military and the DoD is very, very strong. We also have a huge veteran community because a lot of people don't want to leave once they get stationed here. I was one of them. So that's always been strong. There's a huge cohesive aspect and a huge community here. But as far as what I'm hearing from the guys on the front lines, it's that hey, mental health is still a problem. We're still losing people in droves to suicide, and we're still, people are getting kicked out of the Department of Defense, whether it's the Army or the Air Force or the Marine Corps for that matter. They're getting kicked out for mental health issues, whether it's PTSD or TBI. It's happening all the time. And the DoD doesn't really have an answer for it. They kick the can down the road. And that's really unfortunate because it does create this culture and this stigma, out from people outside looking in, that like, hey, why would I ever join up with an organization like the Army if I'm just going to get used up and thrown away like a wet tissue when they're done? So that's the biggest problem that I see, and that's also where I see the biggest hope for solutions. Because if we can demonstrate to people that, hey, yes, you can get injured, but we also have the technology to heal you and make sure that your mental health concern is not a lifelong brand that you're going to have to wear on your forehead forever. We can change that stigma and hopefully, get the recruiting numbers up for the DoD, because it is a great opportunity, especially for young people like myself. Like, joining the Army was one of the best things I ever could have done. It helped me get out of that little shit small town that I lived in, that I grew up in, and it helped me become something more. And I never would have been able to do that without the mentorship and the camaraderie that happened for me in the armed forces.
Yeah, and during your time in the armed forces and now, Sam, I'm curious, how has your definition of commitment to service changed over the years? What does that mean to you, my friend?
Service to me means doing something for, doing something for others and participating in a system that is larger than yourself. And that's been really the ethos. That hasn't changed for me. It's always, there's always that component of selfless service. Because let's get this straight. Mental health is hard. It is really fucking hard. And it takes a lot out of practitioners, out of doctors, out of therapists to give a piece of themselves and to help people. And I think that there's a lot of validity and beauty in that sacrifice. And there's also a lot of value in it. Like if they say, I've heard it many times from therapists that work for us and doctors as well. If you want to do something for yourself, do something for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, I've got a trio of questions left for you. And the first of those three, my friend, is you touched on this earlier, but I wanted to ask you about specific, issues and resources that you think need to be increased in order to amplify our support of first responders and those who serve in the military. So, if you could wave your magic wand and fix your top three concerns or issues that you have with military service today, my friend, and how we support first responders, what would those be and why, my friend?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, that's thanks for asking it, because it's such an easy fix. So the first thing I would do, I would wave my magic wand and get CPT codes made for both traumatic brain injuries and PTSD for the use of hyperbaric oxygen therapy to treat those. So that would allow for insurance coverage of PTSD and TBI with hyperbaric oxygen therapy as a treatment modality. HBOT is one of the most effective ways to treat TBI and PTSD, especially when it's paired with other treatment modalities. The second thing I would do is make it illegal for insurance companies to mandate that only a single treatment code is used in a day. That happens to us here in the clinic all the time. Blue Cross Blue Shield just did it to us. That they're only allowing us to do one treatment a day. That's stupid. When we're treating the brain, we need to use a multimodal approach. This is the most advanced organ that we know of in the universe. Trying to treat it with a single modality at a time is not only stupid, it's bad medicine. And insurance companies propagate bad medicine because it helps their bottom line. So that would be the second thing. And the third thing is I would legalize the medical clinical use of psychedelic medicines like ibogaine, psilocybin, and dimethyltryptamine (DMT). Using those being able to use those tools, especially what we're seeing from psilocybin and ibogaine, is incredible. Ibogaine's it cleans out dopaminergic neurons, so it can stop people who are having a heroin withdrawal from having a heroin withdrawal and help clean out their system. So I think we're going to see in the future the use of psychedelics get into mental health and substance abuse treatment in a big way, and I would use my magic wand to jumpstart that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Sam, I'm curious because throughout the course of your life, whether it be in the military or in business, my friend, you've been exposed on how to build effective teams. So, what do you think is the key to building or effective team building? What are your thoughts there?
You As far as building effective teams, I think the first thing you have to do is make sure that everyone you're bringing onto that team is aligned with your central vision. Everybody needs to be rowing that boat in the same direction and understand where you're going. And then the next piece is like getting the right personalities together and creating a culture of open, honest, and compassionate communication. You have to be able to tell someone when they're fucking up. And as a leader, you have to be open to having your subordinates or the other people on your team tell you when you're the problem or when your thought process is the problem. So it's that, and I would say third is creating a space where everyone feels comfortable enough to put their defensiveness and their egos aside to move. The third piece of that answer: how do we create effective teams? And number three is creating a safe space to put our egos aside so that we can take in new information and collectively come to solutions. It is very easy for people to get married to an idea and dig their heels in, and it's always important to have that cohesive team that can compassionately challenge one another in a way that doesn't, trigger you or activate defensiveness. Once you can do that, you have a very high performing team.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, I'll end by sharing just a little bit about myself as I asked you my last question this afternoon, buddy. Sam, I was one of the reasons I resonated with your story is because I respected the way you overcame adversity and fought through a lot of obstacles in your life, buddy, because when I was born, buddy, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. I was born 3 months premature, and I wasn't supposed to live past 3.5, buddy, and I'm now 36. What I wanted to end with, buddy, is your concept of building a legacy and what building a professional and personal legacy really means to you. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, my legacy is about changing the standard of care and improving the standard of care of mental health disorders. This is one of the areas of medicine that honestly sucks right now. It's not focused on outcomes. It's focused on creating repeated patients. And if I could do anything, it would be to change that paradigm so that we are focused on one, treating the root cause of these issues, and two, creating long-term remission from these symptoms, and not just targeting the symptoms themselves, but keeping focused on the root cause of these mental health conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Sam, if people want to get connected with the great work that you're doing or yourself personally, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so the best way to get connected with us is to go check out our website, mindspadenver.com, or give us a call at 303-327-0350, or shoot us an email at info@mindspadenver.com. That goes to me and my team, and we can answer any questions that you have. And even if you're not the right fit for the clinic, or not in the same geographical space, we have a pretty deep network across the country of resources we can link you up with to help treat those mental health conditions that have been plaguing you.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, I have to tell you, I think you're a fascinatingly wonderful person, buddy, that's doing incredible work, buddy. And it was a real privileged to engage in conversation with you this afternoon, buddy. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, the difference you're making, and for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the pod.